It's Halloween season!
On the upward spiral today. Secrets of Halloween, like how it all came together. What makes Halloween Halloweeny?
This episode's called Show Us Your Halloweeny.
When coffins creak and floorboards squeak and kids go trick-or-treating, the witch laughs shrill, the wolves howls chill, and sweets keep hearts a-beating. Yon costume wearer shall feel the terror while watching screens go viral. Now learn the truth with caramelized tooth on this spooky upward spiral.
Show us your Halloweenus.
Oh, sorry, Halloweenus.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Halloweenus.
Yes.
We got it mistaken. Yeah, it's no.
Show us your halitosis.
Yes.
Wait.
There you go. Well, that's why I'm drinking coffee.
Yeah, that's a bit helpful.
But I'm going to send it. Actually, I think Noel's got to be the one to kick this one off because I think that you are the foundation of everything.
We're all given something to talk about.
Right.
Okay.
And the one I get to talk about is why is Halloween spooky?
Why is it spooky?
Which is a really good one to talk about because this kind of gets to go into the history of Halloween.
Yes.
Which is pretty complex, actually.
It is. It
There's
goes
a
back
lot that kind of goes back into it.
hundreds, if not thousands, of years.
It all begins with a Celtic tradition called Samhain, which is spelled like Samhain or something
Totally.
stupid.
Every time you see it, you think it's Sam Hain,
yeah,
but it's Samhain.
Samhain.
Yeah.
It's from Oklahoma, Samhain.
Yeah, basically.
Welcome to Samhain. We're going to have ourselves an end of the year celebration.
Yeehaw! Samhain, Oklahoma.
Samhain. It was a festival.
Yes.
A really important, awesome, amazing festival because, as you know, every culture likes to celebrate its new year.
Yes.
And for the Celtics, the new year happened at the beginning of November. And the logic was, it's getting colder. This is the end of it being warm. Summer is over. It's now going to get freaking crazy cold and bad. So get ready for it.
Right.
Let's prepare ourselves.
Yeah.
Now, the belief was at the time that in this moment, in this eve between the summer and the winter,
Yeah.
the veil that keeps the ghosts away from your home is at its thinnest.
The thinnest veil.
The thinnest veil.
The entire episode is the Monster Mash guy.
The what? The what? The what?
The thinnest veil.
The what veil?
The thinnest veil. So the veil is at its thinnest.
Yes.
Oh, thank God. Thinnest. Gotcha.
Thinnest, which is really an interesting thing because a lot of problems happen when the veil is at its good things and bad things. Okay,
Right.
So because the veil is so thin, the good news is your relatives from the past, the people who you love, can come visit you.
Right.
You can be with them. You can have them actually in your presence. And it's kind of the beginning of ghosts, right? Is this idea that the spirits who have passed on can in that moment visit you and be with you.
Come say, hey, what's up?
Yeah, and so those are really cool traditions where they put out like candles, like light up things, kind of like you see nowadays, right? In Halloween, you put up candles, and those would lead then to where the house was, and then they would have like candles up to like this is where you've got to come. This is where like the fire would lead you to the dinner table, and then you'd leave empty spaces on the dinner table for all your relatives to go sit down, and then you'd have dinner with your.
Oh,
with
that's
your dead
adorable,
relatives.
actually.
Like that movie,
Isn't that
Coco.
Don't mention that.
I know. Where are my box of tissues? Oh my God.
Which will come back later
okay.
as this tradition expands. Okay, because as we explain the spookiness.
Right.
Spookiness.
Right.
So another thing that would happen is this was a time when it was thought that the druids, the priests of Celtics, had the most power. They had the most ability to make change, to give predictions, to help things, to move things along forward. So they would light these huge, massive bonfires, and they would have these celebrations around the bonfires where the druids would make predictions and like do blessings for people and make them like see what's going to happen next. And you'd have like all sorts of wacky, fun, wild stuff that was going on in these druid celebrations.
Yeah. Did they have princesses?
They did have princesses. They had like chieftains. They had kings. They had everything.
Great. Just what we need.
A Druish princess. Funny. She doesn't look Druish.
Best movie ever, Spaceballs. If you haven't seen it, catch it.
Catch it now.
We didn't realize it was a Halloween film, but it is.
Yeah.
So this all this stuff would happen all of that period of time, and then while that was going on in the celebration, the people would then dress up. And I don't know. I'm not supposed to do costumes, right?
Don't do costumes.
I'm not doing costumes.
Spoiler alert. That's my game.
I'm not doing costumes. I will only say that maybe
you can set it up.
Maybe things were worn at the time with the purpose of there are also like fairies. Who are at that time, fairies in those days were like terrifying.
Yeah.
They're like bad guys, right? So you had fairies and like little evil spirits.
Yeah, we think of Tinkerbell, but it wasn't like that at all,
they
man.
were monsters.
Like brownies, like those little like.
Yeah, exactly.
And these things were also could also more readily be around and could escape and be available during this time of the year.
Yeah.
Okay? So you had to protect your loving family members who are going to eat dinner with you from those people.
Yeah.
And so part of the celebration was you dress up in like old, like in like, try to look like a monster or like a scary bull or animal like that in order to keep them away.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this neat little celebration.
Yeah.
So this goes on and is this part of the tradition that sort of opens the idea of the spookiness that only gets spookier over time as everybody else tries to make the Celts stop being Celtic.
Right.
Okay.
Trying to take it away.
Exactly. So
The Lakers did that in 1987, baby. Woo!
There's Magic, got it. Magic fires. It's the Lakers win the game. The Lakers win the game.
And 85.
Is that sports?
And 86.
Are you guys talking
and
about sports?
2000, what was it, 7 that Kobe did it? Something like that? I don't remember. Maybe they lost in 2007.
Sports talk.
Sports Talk 2010.
Sports Talk.
2011. I don't know, guys. I don't know.
Several
They've
times.
only beaten them 3 times. It's the Celtics have beaten the Lakers like 1,000 times. So
Yes.
that's to throw it to Boston for the folks who know. But
With Barry Lurd.
yes.
Yes, Barry Lurd.
And Pubbert Rarish and Mevin Kikale. See, sports comes into Halloween all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Romans, as we all know, took over most of the Celtic Empire. And the first kind of change that happened was they added a Roman holiday called Feralia. Or
Okay.
Feralia. I think it's Feralia.
Pharrell is his name, and he sings that song,
Called
Happy.
Pharrell Williams Day.
Yes.
Yeah. And on Pharrell Williams Day, they were celebrating the goddess of apple trees, Pomona.
Oh.
It started in Pomona.
Started in Pomona, right here.
Boys, road
right
trip.
around the corner.
Pomona.
Yes. So this goddess was like was about bearing fruit, and so
Yeah.
like they tied this whole thing into the rest of it, and then so that's why you're bobbing for apples, and that's why apple cider and apples are such a big
Oh,
deal.
I love it.
During the holidays. So the Romans started getting involved, and then Romans, just being Roman, added a little bit like fear and mystery. Like, what the heck are these Celtics doing? Things got a little bit like spookier.
Sure.
But it gets even better when you start to add in All Saints Day, which is brought in by the Catholics.
Right.
So once you start adding in All Saints Day, now you have the Day of the Dead. You have the first is the day of like, now we're taking this over completely. We're making this now a Catholic Christian thing that
Right.
goes on, which now means that we can kind of redefine ghosts a little bit to fit that. So ghosts are now also Christian ghosts, not just the pagan ghosts.
Not just pagan ghosts.
So we're starting to shift from ghosts being a thing that's kind of beautiful and wanted and loving, and ghosts protect us and ghosts help us. Ghosts are our relatives. To ghosts are maybe dangerous. Ghosts are
Right.
like
Evil could
little-
lurk in the shadows.
Could lurk in the shadows.
Right.
And so this continues on and on and on, and then these holidays start to like bake into each other. And then as time goes by and people get spooked out, because also you got to remember it's getting darker.
Yeah.
Right? And you're celebrating at night. And you already have all these other reasons why it's colder and spookier, and people are talking about ghosts, and people are already getting superstitious and a little wild and crazy about what's going on with the holiday, which is making it spookier. It gets ultra spooky when you start adding in the concept of superstition, like black cats and witches.
Cool. I'm loving this.
So the reason that we try not to let a black cat cross our path is because it was believed that witches had the ability to turn themselves into black cats.
Right.
And so you didn't want a witch to cross your path because a witch was going to probably murder you in your sleep and turn you into a something. But witches
newt.
She turned me into a newt. A newt.
into a newt.
Got better.
So in the 1500s and around that period of time, witches then became this big part of Halloween.
Yeah.
That now this is when the witches can make their cauldrons and do their brews.
The
and they
witching hour.
They have the most ability to contact the spirits of the dead because the veil is at its thinnest. This tradition continues on. This
Yeah.
idea that this is the time when the dead can meet with us because All Saints Day is tomorrow and All Hallows Eve was tonight and Samhain, and this is insane. This is so now there's a big freak out about the fact that like the wishes are going to take over the world.
Right.
Well, that then continues on, keep getting spookier and spookier and spookier until we get to a modern day religion where maybe there's less worry about all of the witches and the ghosts and the rest of it, and it starts to become more on the, as education comes along, it starts to be more of a fun thing.
Yes.
And so the spooky becomes more of a neat, exciting, fun,
Playful.
joyous thing, a playful thing, a great thing. But really, it all kind of comes down to these Roman traditions, the Christian traditions, and the original Celtic traditions all merging into this one sort of holiday.
Yeah.
Where now we do all the things that you guys are going to be talking about next. And spookiness sort of sits there because we all wonder, are the ghosts on the other veil family and loved ones? Or foe? Or are they evil monsters or people summoned by evil witches.
Which is what our set is filled with. Just evil, scary. No, actually, these are quite friendly decorations around us. So I feel like we've surrounded ourselves with spooky family.
We have.
We've done the right. This is a very upward spiral feeling.
Well, we're trying to make it a happy one.
We are trying
because the kind of thing that naturally happens when you have a spooky day is you start to get things like horror films.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
You start to get like these wonderful. I mean, some of the stories that come from even the Celtic times way back when
are amazing.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
These like Irish tales of terror that they have, like these, like some of these stories are just
so
wickedly scary.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, because that's the time of the ghosts and the spirits, that's when you read them.
Yeah.
So now every single monster, your Frankensteins, your Draculas, your werewolves, everything, they all sort of get to now celebrate this night as the scary night because
They did the mash.
They did the monster mash?
They did the monster mash.
It was a graveyard smash.
There he is. What's so fascinating about it is here are all these countries around the world that all deem the entrance into winter as this thinning of the veil, this spooky time. And I thought this is what's so fascinating because we don't think about this in modern day society. We all know Game of Thrones, right? Mm-hmm. Winter is coming.
Winter is coming. Winter is coming. Winter is coming.
Winter is coming.
Winter is coming.
Winter is coming.
Winter is coming.
Winter is coming.
Winter is coming. What you don't think about in modern society is what was winter like to people that had no technology, no calendars, no understanding of what the hell was going on? All they knew was one day they went out, got darker, everything they needed to eat died,
right.
All the food ran away.
Right.
They were like, is the land cursed?
Right.
And then what would happen is you'd get through the winter and the sun would come back, spring would come, summer would come, and they'd be like, we're okay, we made it.
Right.
And then it would happen again.
Yeah.
And again and again and again. So what's so
You
amazing
had
is
to have some kind of tradition to
you
be
had
like,
to, they had to, because
get ready.
there's no education behind it. There's no real research and study in all of these places around the world. They all kind of dreamed up the same thing, which is for some reason at winter, at this time of year, the land must be cursed, which means that we are experiencing what the dead are experiencing. We're crossing over into this new territory. So I just think that that's what's so fascinating about it is it was almost a completely global understanding. And then when it came time for the church and the Romans and the pagans and everybody, they were like, wait, you guys celebrate this too? You know what I mean? It was like they were all like, wait, this is kind of weird because we just met.
Right.
You guys dress up and run around and like go to each other's house. That's freaking crazy, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's hilarious.
The only thing that I have to say because someone's going to come and
They're gonna come and
correct us
correct
at
it,
some
yeah,
point.
yeah.
So All Saints Day used to be like in May.
It did.
Yeah.
I saw that.
Yeah.
They had it and then they moved it.
They moved it because there's a thing that the Catholics love to do, which is to be like, you got a holiday?
Yeah.
We're gonna purloin your holiday and
Yeah.
turn it into our holiday
Yes.
and make it a hybrid thing.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of what they did with that one.
Yeah.
But the Roman one was absolutely
During the same time.
like 3 days later.
Yeah,
And they just moved it back.
All Saints Day was early. They moved it, and then they added the All Souls Day after it, and then that whole section, the Eve, and all three. That's All Hallows Tide or something like that.
Yes.
It's like the combination of
Those
the whole
3 days
put
exactly.
together.
And it
Yeah.
used to be in the Celtic times that if you didn't show up for for part of that 3 day party to
Yeah.
greet the chieftain or
Yeah.
the king of the area, that like you'd be cursed.
You'd be hosed.
You'd be hosed.
Really?
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
Oh,
Done for
wow.
'em.
It's a big
Show
deal.
up to the party, man.
Show up to the party. Yeah, like 3 days, man.
Yeah.
Show
Come
up.
on.
Show your face.
Yeah. So that's why we rage when it comes to the Halloween season because we don't want to be cursed. That's why we party
so
hardy.
true. These guys go hard.
We go super hard.
It's a big one. It's a fun one.
Big one.
Go massive on Halloween. We get the kids drunk on candy and we get ourselves drunk on mescaline.
All right, Clayton, are you up to bed?
Oh, baby, how do I follow that up? Holy smokes. What I'm going to be talking about today, ladies and gentlemen, is trick-or-treating. How did that happen? How do we go from a spooky, spoopy, like thin veil,
Schmoopy,
schmoopy kind of thing? How do we get our little kids to go out and knock on doors and do trick-or-treatings?
Right.
So here's how, boys.
Okay.
Okay.
1800s, America had a lot of immigrants coming in from the Celts. That's right, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh,
A lot of the Celts, Scottish, Irish, they all came out to the United States.
Oh, no. And parts of France.
And parts of France as well. They went out to the United States and they brought in their celebrations with them. They also brought in the trickery.
Yeah.
The debauchery. And I don't mean
Tomfoolery.
like tomfoolery. And I don't mean like debauchery as in like, debauchery.
A fun debauchery. Harry Potter style debauchery.
Harry
we didn't show up
Potter.
to class. Instead, we found a dragon.
That's great. That's
It's
great.
perfect.
Yeah.
They brought in this whole thing of doing pranks on their neighbors. And especially like in the rural areas, like in the farming communities, they were like, all right, lads, let's go out and mess with McGregor's fair. And so they just went nuts. They did stuff. I wrote some stuff down here. Putting farmers' wagons or livestock on barn roofs. Uprooting the neighbor's entire vegetable crop because that could kill them.
I know, that's terrible.
Wait,
actually. That's too far. Like the cart and the livestock on the roof is funny.
That's funny.
And when you
That's
uproot their food, you're kind of like, whoa.
Do you ever meet one of those guys who does the pranks wrong?
Yeah,
Like who doesn't
yeah.
understand where the line is?
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like he'll
totally.
be like, "Oh, we're gonna do this awesome prank." You're like, "You killed a guy."
Yeah, that's way too far. Way too far.
There's movies about
At some
that.
point, it stops being a prank, buddy.
Yeah, right.
It's now called murder.
Yeah.
At least manslaughter.
Yeah.
So, okay, so then this is an interesting one. They used to take a cabbage and they used to like light the cabbage and like kind of smoke it, right? And they would put it right by the guy's keyhole or by like a draft hole and let this noxious smoke go into his house. So by the time he comes home from the revelries, he opens the door and there's nothing but ass cabbage.
Because if you notice that cabbage, when it starts to go bad, has like a total ass smell.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And so that prank, I have no issue with that as long as you're not burning the house down. But like,
Right,
you're
right.
just basically making his house fart-tastic.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is a
Which
cool.
some people appreciate.
Some people like it.
So many gates were taken off their hinges to let the livestock just roam free. That
Again.
in some regions in the United States, it was called gate night.
Oh my God.
That's just too
Yeah,
much.
that is so mean.
It's so mean.
So mean.
And the problem is, it only got worse. This is like 19th century into the 20th century. These guys went so hard that their kids are like, oh, this is fun. Let's really mess stuff up. And they removed manhole covers so people would fall in.
Oh my God.
At
Dude.
the advent of the automobile.
Dude, that's how he dies in Seoul, man. That's how he dies.
That's how he died in Seoul. Exactly. They would set fires in garbage cans all around the city. They would break the glass windows of their neighbors. They would trip pedestrians. They would throw bags of flour into people's faces. They used to wax streetcar tracks on hills. Think about that. So that the
They lose
streetcars
control of the streetcar.
So this is like getting really freaking hardcore, okay?
These aren't tricks.
No.
It got so bad, there was like these pranksters that would take a wire across the sidewalk and trip people. And a guy in 1907 got tripped, got so pissed, he pulled out his gun and shot one of the pranksters and killed him. So in the 1930s,
I mean, you shouldn't have tripped the guy, just to be honest.
you think it's going to get better? Gets even worse.
What?
Yeah.
We killed a guy.
Dude, there's multiple people killed on Halloween.
Yeah.
So here's the deal. In the 30s, everything went to crap because it was suddenly the Depression. So now everybody's like, I'm so angry, I lost all my money, I got nothing else to do or live for or whatever. Let's go mess stuff up. And so it went to the nth degree. So by 1933, America was like, we have to ban Halloween. However, because the prohibition was like basically coming to an end, people were like, it's probably a bad idea to prohibit people's fun,
Right.
like we did in the 20s and we got Al Capone.
Right.
So why don't we just do the other side of things? What if we bribe the kids?
Bribery always works.
Always.
Always
It's
works.
never failed.
So everybody grab a ton of candy. Let's buy a bunch of candy. And then they started training the kids. Okay, so here's what you're going to do. On the crazy night, you go up to a door and you knock at the door and you say the phrase, trick or treat.
There you go.
So if you don't have a treat, I'm going to mess up your house, man. And like, oh, yeah, here's a candy bar. Great, thank you so much. And that's when it all turned into trick or treat.
So you're paying these
You're
children
paying the
to
kids.
stop murder.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that's the history of trick or treating, ladies and gentlemen.
That's amazing.
That is a mind-blowing piece of information.
I mean, you hear the stories about trick-or-treating and that people used to pull pranks, but I mean, I don't think I ever knew it went that far. That
It got
kids
dark.
were having train cars sliding, they were letting livestock go, they were ruining crops. I mean, the things that the kids did in the United States, you just don't realize that when our grandparents were kids, that's when this stuff was happening. They were, you know,
In the 20s, it was
Yeah.
like, it was still going nuts.
yeah. That's crazy to think that.
I think it's pretty creative, actually. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, kids are gonna play, but if you give them something better to do, I mean, what, free candy?
Yeah,
Come on,
totally.
You spend your whole night getting candy. That takes away a lot of tricking hours.
Yeah.
that's brilliant.
Yeah, it reminds me of Jerry Seinfeld. He in '99 he had a HBO special called "I'm Telling You for the Last Time," and does this whole bit about Halloween.
So the first time you hear the concept of Halloween, when you're a kid, your brain can't even process the information. You're like, What is this? What did you say? So what did you say about giving out candy? Who was giving out candy? Everyone that we know is just giving out candy? Are you kidding me? When is this happening? Where? Why? Take me with you. I gotta be a part of this. I'll do anything that they want. I can wear that.
And that is like such a, it's so true. And that leads us to costumes. Why costumes?
Why costumes?
The crazy thing is the costumes, they actually do go all the way back to Samhain, and they go all the way back there because there were traditions that were involved in when the veil was thin. They thought, oh, well, if I dress up to look like the evil or relatives or whatever the dressing, then I'll fool them. They'll think I'm one of them. They can't get me, right? So it goes all the way back to ancient history. And then even in the 15th, 16th, 17th century, those times, they had these things, these traditions, mumming, guising, and souling. These are all the traditions of going door to door. Souling was essentially the poor lower classes in England and whatnot. They would go door to door during the season and ask for food, but they would dress up like saints, martyrs, the dead. And it was like bad luck if you turned them away without giving them anything. So they would go door to door like the trick-or-treating, but they would have to be dressed up in a costume, and they would get a soul cake. And that was part of that. Yeah, so that was soul cake. So that was kind of, it goes back there. But really the tradition of costumes that we know in the United States today is kind of loosely tied to that, but it really has more to do with what Clayton talked about, which is we got to get these kids to stop killing people. We got to get these kids to stop wreaking hell. We got to do something to distract them.
Right.
And when they figured out that in 1933, that's exactly what it was, they were like, if we gave them costumes to dress up in, like Mickey and Minnie Mouse, or radio show characters, or things that they're reading in comic books, we've got a winner on our hands, and they'll be so distracted with that they won't want to do all the murder and mayhem. So that was
Ranger.
Exactly. So they start this idea of like, let's introduce costumes, because the wild thing, and I wonder how many of our parents and grandparents would remember this who are still around, costumes used to be like a thing that people would do in the U.S. on all the holidays.
Wow.
So they used to do New Year's parties that were costumes and balls. They used to do Valentine's Day that were costume parties and balls. They would do Christmas parties, would be costume parties. So the idea of costumes was not solely reserved for Halloween. If you did a costume on Halloween, it had to be spooky. It had to be scary.
Obviously, yeah.
But if you would have a costume party at a lot of different occasions all across the country at other holidays. So it's spooky up into this point, and then they figure out in 1933, let's give the kids these cutesy characters, and then that's where it really starts to lean. It doesn't have to be spooky. It can be cute. It can be family friendly. Right. But the problem is in 1933 and the 1930s, these box costumes, these Mickey costumes, they're just way too expensive for the everyday family. Yeah. It was considered a luxurious item to be able to buy a box costume at Macy's or
That's
whatever.
The Depression, man, honestly.
They couldn't do it. So they were basically starting to make their homemade costumes. And if you're really rich, maybe you'll have a box Mickey Mouse costume, but otherwise your parents are going to have to draw it on a plate and pin it to your face or whatever. So it's
Mom, why are you using pins? Ow, ow,
ow. Thus the inspiration for Hellraiser was born.
The box. You opened it.
As we move into the 1940s, we're after the war where a lot of pinup calendars have become very popular, and this is where the notion of things could start being
racy,
sexy.
Wait, in the 40s, really? That's when it started?
Is the first time that people start thinking to themselves, well, maybe I could dress up and be a little sexy. It doesn't become like I'm a sexy banana. That comes later.
Although that is my favorite costume.
I'm always a sexy banana, man.
Sexy banana. That's what I call you both.
Sexy marshmallow. Another one.
Yeah, sexy marshmallow.
I'm sexy Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yeah, totally. And that's a thing now.
And
That's
she
a thing.
was.
And she was.
Wait, are you serious?
There, you could Google.
That was a joke, by the way.
You could Google sexy insert here. You could do sexy
They have one.
anything, and it is out there. I promise
Sexy
you.
Garfield.
Yes, sexy Garfield exists.
Oh, no.
Seen it. love it. Also likes lasagna.
Seen it, love it, love lasagna.
Exactly. So this is the introduction of the 40s. It's just like, oh, well, maybe we can infuse the holiday into some sexy stuff. So then by the time we get into the 1950s, this is where the box costume becomes accessible.
Okay.
They make it affordable for all the families. And now
because of the intro of plastics.
Plastics.
Exactly.
Another example of how plastic saved
the
all of us.
world. Well, thank you, plastic. See the Biofriendly podcast as to why we did not agree with that. During this time period, they add a lot more characters. They start adding Batman.
Yeah,
they start adding cowboys, Lone Ranger.
Yeah.
And this is also the rise of the culturally insensitive costume because we're doing cowboys, the Indians, and we're borrowing from other stuff. But at the time, they thought it was a tribute. It was just a different era. They thought it was a nice thing to do.
Or they were racists. Either way.
It might be a little column A, a little column B.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a different time.
It was a different time. It's a different
So,
time.
I know people hate that excuse, and they hate when you say that. But I mean, it's just
Yeah.
I don't know. Context, unfortunately, changes things.
It
Things
does.
happen
And a
because
lot of
of
8-year-olds and a lot of 8-year-olds were not making decisions based on any kind of agenda. They were just like seeing what they saw on TV and they thought it was cool.
Yeah. The same person being a sexy Indian
Yes.
later on may have very well been protesting against.
Absolutely. Might have been Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
You never
Bernie
know.
Sanders
Bernie
was
could
a
have been a
sexy
sexy Indian.
in the 1930s.
I got to look that up on Google. Oh, man.
It's probably out there. So then we get to the 1950s. Everybody's, the popular costumes, comic book characters are reigning supreme. Everybody can get the costumes. And so Halloween and trick-or-treating are growing big time because now everybody's excited about their favorite character and things that they get to dress up as. Then we get to the 1960s. And in 1969 is really the first newspaper appearance of a presidential figure as a Halloween mask.
What?
Nixon. A
perfect.
protester wears a Nixon mask to a protest before his inauguration. It's in a newspaper, and people are like, "Wait, we can dress up like presidents? That's crazy!"
Change the whole ball game.
Change the whole ball game. Without that single act, we would not have the film Point Break.
I'm ready. Rock and roll.
Hell yeah! You gotta have the presidential mask. So during the 70s, now this is where we start to reflect the culture that we're living in, and it's not just about being scary. Feminism makes a rise because of the Catwoman appearance in Batman.
The Catwoman is not like the others.
So a lot of women are like, well, I want to be like a powerful, strong female.
Yeah.
You start seeing a lot more of the political activism starting to take place in the costumes, and people are dressing up. Even Nixon's daughter showed up at a White House party with a Lyndon B. Johnson mask. That was like a famous thing as well.
Yeah.
So all through the 70s, this is where the things start to change. But then we get to the 1980s, our time, boys, when we were coming
Down
up.
here?
Down here, it's our time. It's our time down here.
Our time.
Down here.
Down here. I'm glad you said that.
It's their time up
because
there?
it was the rise of two things. Fandom,
Yeah, baby.
E.T., Star Wars, all the things that
Goonies.
Goonies, the things that we grew up with, which would be that crossover of marketing your movie and your TV show into Halloween.
Yeah.
One.
Yeah.
Also the rise of the slasher.
Tommy, please! Tommy, hurry up!
You are all my children now.
The rise of gruesome horror movies.
Jason,
Exactly.
Freddy Krueger, Mike
All of them.
Myers.
Mike Myers.
Oh,
Yep.
sorry.
Yeah.
Side mission. Do you know what he says or what that soundtrack is in Friday the 13th? It isn't it's actually somebody saying kill, kill, kill.
Is it
Oh
really?
my God, that's
It
terrifying.
is.
Wow, that person doesn't know how to speak because it sounds like this.
She's like, wait, excuse me?
Pardon?
What are you saying? I misunderstood.
I always thought it was the word for shikaka, which is the bat dog from Ace Ventura. Shikaka.
Shikaka.
So we're in the 80s now, and now we've got all these gruesome masks and things making a rise, which this is probably common knowledge, but I might as well say it to our Upward Spiral audience. If you didn't know, the Michael Myers mask is
so
in
good.
fact, it is William Shatner's face from Star Trek. And
James Tiberius Kirk.
James Tiberius Kirk. It is his
dork.
mask that has completely lost all of its paint, and it's just completely worn and ragged, but that's the face of the mask, which is interesting because that would make sense as Star Trek characters were becoming popular in the 70s. That's why they had access to it. So then we get into the 90s, and the 90s, the major thing that changes here is people start deciding, this Halloween, I'm dressing up like OJ. This Halloween, I'm dressing up like Clinton. This Halloween, I'm dressing up like a event that's happening in pop
An
culture.
ironic event.
Ironic event, exactly. So this is what changes to really where we are now, which is you borrow from your favorite characters, your favorite movies, the gruesome monsters, the spooky, all that. But now people use Halloween. You would look at it now as a commentary as to what is happening in the world today, because we will, this Halloween, once again, see dozens and dozens of costumes that refer to what happened in 2024.
Yeah.
And that had never happened really until about the 90s.
Right.
And so that's the history of costumes.
Well
on
played,
Halloween.
sir. That is really well done.
Interesting, right?
Incredible.
Really cool.
Although I do wonder if Crag dressed up like Thog back in the caveman times.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because Thog had that
definitely.
embarrassing moment where he stepped in the rhino poo.
There was probably roasting back then.
It probably was,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so then he probably had to like fashion some like rhino poo to put in his foot. And he's like, oh, you know?
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of dressing up like somebody else or imitating somebody, that's probably one of our oldest things in the world that you could, think of. It's like, I'm going to act like this person out of humor or whatever. But yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, costumes.
All right, boys. So you guys ready to strap in?
I'm ready.
Let's do
strap
this.
in. Let's go.
All right. It's time for your catapult.
I got my mummy here. You know what his favorite kind of music is?
What?
Rap. Because...
I see, yes.
All right, you know when he's sick because he's usually coughing.
Okay, boo.
Get out of there. I love that guy in the left.
He's great. He's a winner.
That's it. He's
a winner.
He's one of our friends.
Happy Halloween, everybody.
Happy Halloween. Bye.